Today we're going to talk about laydown yards. A laydown yard is an area outside at a work site where tools, materials, equipment, vehicles, and things of that nature are stored until they need to be used. They are most common on construction sites, but other operations, such as manufacturing or oil field operations, have laydown yards as well. There can be many hazards to employees as well as property loss incidents in these areas. What are some of the hazards of laydown yards? There can be a long list of hazards present in a laydown yard depending on what you're storing there and the operations that take place in and around them. Some common hazards to consider are these: slip, trip, and fall hazards. One of the most common hazards present in laydown yards with poor organization are slip, trip, and fall hazards. When the items stored in the laydown yard are poorly organized or just thrown everywhere, workers who have to navigate the area are more likely to experience a slip, trip, or fall. Also, there are struck-by hazards. Laydown yards often have equipment moving in and out of them throughout the day. Moving equipment presents a struck-by hazard for any worker in the area. There are also biological hazards. Insects and animals are not something we often consider when we are discussing the hazards of a laydown yard. However, animals such as snakes, ticks, spiders, bees, wasps, raccoons, and things of that nature love the shelter of equipment and materials stored in these areas. There are some other considerations with regard to laydown yards. The first is theft. The items in laydown yards can be an easy target for theft depending on how they're set up. Also, property damage. Since many of the tools, equipment, and materials are stored in this one central location at a work site, property damage can easily occur. Moving vehicles or heavy equipment can strike or run over these items if they are not properly organized or if the operators are not careful navigating through the laydown yard. So let's talk about laydown yard hazard elimination. For the hazards that we've mentioned so far, the single best practice to eliminate them is to have good organization and housekeeping in any laydown yard at a work site. Proper organization will eliminate many slip, trip, and fall hazards. A laydown yard that is well organized will also help to eliminate struck-by hazards for workers in the area as well as the items stored in the area. Biological hazards can be a little more difficult to avoid, but inspecting any items you plan on moving prior to doing so can make the difference in whether you are exposed to them. So let's talk about laydown yard organization best practice. The available space for a laydown yard, any operations occurring within the laydown yard, the items being stored there, and the frequency of the items being moved in and out of the yard will dictate the best way to set it up. Some general effective best practices for laydown yards are: have plenty of space in between heavy equipment or materials that need to be moved frequently. Place items that are not needed soon or frequently out of the way of items that need to be accessed more often. Leave walking paths for workers to access items. Place caution tape or other barriers to keep people out of hazardous areas or where heavy equipment travels. Discard or scrap any items that are deemed as unrepairable or trash to avoid unnecessary clutter. Periodically inspect and reevaluate laydown yards to improve on their setup. To prevent theft, there are a number of measures we can take. The most obvious measure is to have a secure fence around the laydown yard. Depending on what is in the laydown yard, barbed wire and a fence cover need to be something that we employ as well. Any items stored in a laydown yard should never be placed right up against the fence. Always lock up laydown yards at the end of the shift. Another best practice is never to discuss the items that are stored at a work site with individuals who do not work there. The knowledge that certain items are at a work site can entice someone to break in. Laydown yards often get neglected due to everyone being concentrating on the actual work we're trying to complete. Because of this neglect, these areas can be full of unnecessary hazards that result in injuries to the workers who have to enter them. Costly property damage and theft can also occur if we don't take the proper steps to protect the items stored in these areas. These are just a few tips to help you with your laydown yard.